Hello, this is day 94 of reading one canto of the Divine Comedy every day. We are on Paradiso, Canto 27, which I'll read from the Longfellow translation before giving some quick comments. Glory be to the Father, and to the Son, and Holy Ghost. All paradise began, so that the melody inebriate made me. What I beheld seemed unto me a smile of the universe, for my inebriation found entrance through the hearing and the sight. O joy, O gladness inexpressible, O perfect life of love and peacefulness, O riches without hankering secure. Before mine eyes were standing the 4 torches enkindled, and the one that first had come began to make itself more luminous, and even such in semblance it became as Jupiter would become, if he and Mars were birds, and they should interchange their feathers. That providence, which here distributeth season and service, in the blessed choir had silence upon every side imposed. When I heard say, If I my colour change, marvel not at it, for while I am speaking, thou shalt behold all these their colour change. He who usurps upon the earth my place, which vacant has become before the presence of the Son of God, has of my cemetery made a sewer of blood and stench, whereby the perverse one, who fell from here, below there is appeased. With the same colour which, through sun adverse, painteth the clouds at evening or at morn, beheld I then the whole of heaven suffused, and, as a modest woman, who abides sure of herself, and, at another's failing, from listening only, timorous becomes, even thus did Beatrice change countenance, and I believe in heaven was such eclipse when suffered the supreme omnipotence. Thereafterward proceeded forth his words with voice so much transmuted from itself, the very countenance was not more changed. The spouse of Christ has never nurtured been on blood of mine, of Linus and of Cletus, to be made use of in a quest of gold, but in a quest of this delightful life, Sixtus and Pius, Urban and Calixtus, after much lamentation, shed their blood. Our purpose was not that on the right hand of our successors should in part be seated the Christian folk, in part upon the other, nor that the keys which were to me confided should ever become the escutcheon on a banner that should wage war on those who are baptized, nor I be made the figure of a seal to privileges venal and mendacious, whereat I often redden and flash with fire. In garb of shepherds the rapacious wolves are seen from here above over all the pastures. O wrath of God, why dost thou slumber still? To drink our blood the Saracens and Gascons are making ready. O thou good beginning, unto how vile an end must thou needs fall. But the high providence, that with Scipio at Rome the glory of the world defended, will speedily bring aid, as I conceive. And thou, my son, who by thy mortal weight shalt down return again, open thy mouth. What I conceal not, do not thou conceal. As with its frozen vapors downward falls in flakes our atmosphere, what time the horn of the celestial goat doth touch the sun, upward in such array saw I the ether become, and flaked with the triumphant vapors, which there together with us had remained. My sight was following up their semblances, and followed till the medium, by excess, the passing farther onward took from it. Whereat the lady, who beheld me freed from gazing upward, said to me, Cast down thy sight, and see how far thou art turned round. Since the first time that I had downward looked, I saw that I had moved through the whole arc which the first climate makes from midst to end. So that I saw the mad track of Ulysses past Gades, and this side well nigh the shore, whereon became Europa a sweet burden. And of this threshing floor the sight to me were more unveiled, but the sun was proceeding under my feet, a sign, and more removed. My mind enamored, which is dallying at all times with my lady, to bring back to her mine eyes was more than ever ardent. And if, or art, or nature has made bait to catch the eyes and so possess the mind, in human flesh, or in its portraiture, all joined together would appear as naught to the divine delight which shone upon me, when to her smiling face I turned me round. The virtue that her look endowed me with, from the fair nest of Leda tore me forth, and up into the swiftest heaven impelled me. Its parts, exceeding full of life and lofty, are all so uniform, I cannot say which Beatrice selected for my place. But she, who was aware of my desire, began, the while she smiled so joyously that God seemed in her countenance to rejoice. The nature of that motion, which keeps quiet the center and all the rest about it moves, from hence begins as from its starting point. And in this heaven there is no other where than in the mind divine, wherein is kindled the love that turns it, and the power it reigns. Within a circle light and love embrace it, even as this doth the others, and that precinct he who encircles it alone controls. Its motion is not by another meted, but all the others measured are by this, as 10 is by the half and by the fifth. And in what manner time in such a pot may have its roots, and in the rest its leaves, now unto thee can manifest be made. O covetousness, that mortals dost engulf beneath thee so, that no one hath the power of drawing back his eyes from out thy waves. Full fairly blossoms in mankind the will, but the uninterrupted rain converts into abortive wildlings the true plums. Fidelity and innocence are found only in children. Afterwards they both take flight, or ever the cheeks with down are covered. One, while he prattles still, observes the fasts, who, when his tongue is loosed, forthwith devours whatever food under whatever moon. Another, while he prattles, loves and listens unto his mother, who, when speech is perfect, forthwith desires to see her in her grave. Even thus is swarthy made the skin so white in its first aspect of the daughter fair of him who brings the morn and leaves the night. Thou, that it may not be a marvel to thee, think that on earth there is no one who governs, whence goes astray the human family. Ere January be unwintered wholly by the centesimal on earth neglected, shall these supernal circles roar so loud, the tempest that has been so long awaited shall whirl the poops about where are the prows, so that the fleet shall run its course direct, and the true fruit shall follow on the flower. This canto is full of more rebukes, more invectives against both the church and the state at Dante's current time of his writing. First, Peter and all the other souls about him are described as turning the color of a harsh sunset or sunrise, rather than the white or gold light that had been about them before. And as they do so, Peter begins his rebuke of the current church. He goes off about the corrupt pope, about how he and his successors didn't die so that it could become like this. And he even hints at the upcoming Avignon papacy, which at the time the poem takes place at, 1300, that had not started yet. It begins, I think, in 1305. If I didn't say so before, the Avignon papacy was when something like 7 popes in a row stopped residing in Rome, the seat of the church, and instead went to Avignon in France. It arose from the conflicts between the papacy and the French king, as hinted at in Dante's apocalyptic visions on the top of purgatory that we went over. It caused a whole big mess, because the pope's not really supposed to go and live somewhere else like that, so there were questions about legitimacy and whatever. There were 3 popes at one point before it all got resolved. It was a mess. Despite all his anger and his rebukes, though, St. Peter explains that he still has hope for the church. He hints at a coming reform of some kind, that God will not let the church go too far off the rails. After all, he was willing to work through Scipio to save pagan Rome for the purposes of disseminating the faith throughout the land. Therefore, how much more will he help the church on account of itself? This expresses Dante's simultaneous dissatisfaction with the way things are and desire for reform, but also a desire for unity. He does not wish to split the church or do anything to harm it, simply to make things better. In Dante's mind, if the clergy were acting like clergy instead of like kings or like worldly men, then things would be fine. Just after this speech, Beatrice raises Dante above the fixed stars to the final sphere, the Primum mobile. This is the fastest of all the spheres. It rotates the fastest and it contains all the others, and furthermore governs the motion of all of them. We are told that the Primum mobile, which contains all the other spheres, is not contained by anything else except the mind of God himself, with which Dante says, again, contains that love that turns all of them, that moves all of them. And finally, Beatrice gives a speech in which she both explains to Dante where he is and what's going on, as well as goes off about civil authorities' corruption and about how a lack of leadership has caused man to fall so low as to be doing what is currently happening in Florence and Italy and throughout the world. She too hints at a coming reform in that department that should fix things. It occurs to me that this canto is full of the lessons of all three of the saints that just did their examinations: faith, hope, and love. First, St. Peter gives an injunction about how the faith has been twisted by those who would rather gain gold off of it. Hope. Dante shows hope that things will resolve themselves, that divine providence will make a move to help reform the church as well as the state, even though some of the things he's talking about and referring to, like the church corruption and the Avignon papacy, those are things that do not get resolved during his lifetime. He does not have any way to actually know for sure what and when and how those things will be fixed, but he believes and has hope anyway. And finally, love. Firstly, of course, Beatrice, who he loves, is the one who takes action to raise him up to the Primum mobile. She explains to him where he is and what's going on. But where does the love come in, you say? Well, she says that it is the love of God within his mind that is moving all of the spheres. And of course, we just heard from St. John, or rather Dante's canto in which he's speaking to St. John, about how you can arrive at a love of God through a love of his creation, any of his created things, provided that love is rightly ordered. And what do we have here? We have the Primum mobile, which we're told governs the movement of every other sphere, and therefore every other created thing, and it itself is moved by the love of God. In Dante's hopes both for the civil state as well as the state of the church, he prioritizes unity and a return to that which made each shine the brightest as its instrument of God's will on earth. That's all for today, though. I'll see you tomorrow.